So I saw this story and I thought, wow, we have to talk about this. Ukraine is actually sending some of its soldiers to a European partner for drone defense. Like you're in the middle of a hot war, you're sending them because they're the experts who know what they're doing and they can inform the Europeans. That's actually happening. It is Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. And here we go. Ukraine sends drone warfare experts to Denmark as mystery UAVs trigger Nordic security alert. Ukrainian drone warfare specialists joined Danish forces for a week-long Wings of Defense exercise as Copenhagen deals with unidentified aerial vehicles in its airspace. Well, we know where they're coming from. They're coming from Russia. But here's the article from Euromaidan Press. Ukrainian military specialists have deployed to Denmark to participate in this Wings of Defense exercise. Ukrainian servicemen arrived in the kingdom to support Danish partners amid a situation involving unidentified UAVs appearing over Denmark. The exercises come as Scandinavian country grapples with a series of mysterious drone incidents that have prompted heightened security measures. Of course, it's all coming from Russia, and everybody knows that. But yeah, and Ukraine is deploying to another country while they're in the middle of a war. Isn't that fascinating? Throughout the week of training, participants will work through practical tasks, exchange knowledge and experience, raising levels of preparation and improving capabilities to counter air threats, the general staff reported. Yeah, in the middle of a war, Ukraine is deploying to Denmark. Fascinating. Now, I saw this map and they updated this. This is Alexander Seymour. I reached out to him. I said, hey, I used your map in my video, and he updated it and said, hope you can use the latest one with the Netherlands, Sweden, and Hungary included. So again, there are all these Russian or what we think are Russian attacks, and well, not attacks, harassment or drone sightings or whatever it is, with the exception of Hungary, which is going the other direction into Ukraine. Okay, remember that a hybrid war is a war. It has become a euphemism loved by bureaucrats and cowards who are afraid that they have to fight back if they actually called it what it really is. Now, this map is from The Economist magazine showing all the places in Europe. Like this has been going on. This is just in 2025 with a couple of exceptions. This is January. I'm sorry. No, I misspoke. January 2018 to May 2025. And so, but most of this is 2025. And it keeps going, and it's going to keep going because we're not doing anything about it. So there we are. Meanwhile, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says, if we continue to believe that Ukraine is our first line of defense, we have to step up the military assistance to Ukraine. Therefore, concretely, we have agreed with Ukraine that a total of 2 billion euros will be spent on drones now. This allows Ukraine to scale up and to use its full capacity. And, of course, it will also allow the European Union to benefit from this technology. So, yeah, share that drone technology because Russia just keeps provoking. Meanwhile, there's a Warsaw Security Forum that's kicking off, and this is a different conference, but the themes are all the same. President Zelensky spoke there and he gave a wide-ranging speech about threats posed by Russia. He said if Russia loses the ability to strike in the skies, it will be unable to continue the war and will have to look for other ways to coexist. I think that's fair. Like they lose all kinds of advantage because on the ground, they really can't do much because unsupported by drones, they're really not getting any progress. Okay, Zelensky also congratulated Moldova on re-electing a majority pro-European parliament on Sunday, despite compelling evidence of Russian interference, unlike Georgia, which he said was currently falling away from Europe. The former president of Georgia was there as well, and she said, we are still on the streets, but we need more attention and support from the EU. And then there was an exiled Belarusian opposition leader saying, as long as the Belarusian president Lukashenko remains in power, threats and provocations against our democratic neighbors will continue. I think all of that is fair commentary. This is where Europe is today, with the exception of Orban, maybe Fico as well. Hungarian Prime Minister Orban said Hungary is not afraid of Russian drones and would shoot them down if they entered its airspace. Anybody think that Russian drones are going to go into Hungarian airspace or that he's worried about that? Like, again, this is the map. This is, again, thank you to Alexander Seymour. This is the map of all the places: Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Norway, Denmark, Netherlands. And there was some on the border in Germany, and they're worried about that. What are we missing here? Like, Slovakia is just not touched. There's a reason, perhaps. Yeah, the situation is clear. The West speaks of defining Ukraine or defending Ukraine, but in reality, it's an imperialist grab, says Orban. Now, just listen to what he's saying and think about whether this is the West and Ukraine or whether this is Russia. The situation's clear. The West speaks of defending Ukraine, but in reality, it's an imperialist grab for land. Isn't that what Russia's doing? All these poor guys in the Donbass, and they're grabbing land, resources, and money. The unfortunate Ukrainian people are being plundered while those pushing for war cloak exploitation in the guise of protection. Isn't that what just happened in 2022 by Russia? Let there be no illusion about this. This is about war and profit. Yeah. It is by Russia. I mean, it's really bizarre that he would say it that way. Andrei Sabiha was replying to Orban after Orban was talking about, hey, we didn't send any drone. And then he kind of backtracked and said, hey, it barely went over the line. Okay. The good news is that Prime Minister Orban has admitted that some drones did enter Ukrainian airspace from Hungary. How about your tweet? How it says Zarto, how is your tweet about fake going? Didn't age well. We will be eager to hear his thoughts on state sovereignty and independence once he is broken free from his dependence on Russian energy, as U.S. President Donald Trump and European partners insisted multiple times. That's right. They're still beholden to Russia. Now, in this video, I was talking about Donald Tusk this yesterday. We're one mistake away from a war that nobody wants. We really are. We're like, something could go very wrong. Neither side meant for it to go wrong, but it could go. And when I say neither side, I'm not saying it's equal. Russia keeps just poking and poking and poking. One of these days, some large group is going to get hurt, and that's going to kick something off if we're not careful. Okay. In that, I was talking about Donald Tusk. Donald Tusk was saying, hey, this is Ukraine is our war. Okay. Hungarian Prime Minister Orban lashed out at Poland's Donald Tusk after he said the war in Ukraine is our war. Orban wrote that Hungary and the EU are not at war with Russia and accused Tusk of playing a dangerous game with the lives and security of millions of Europeans. It's not Tusk who is saying that. That's the problem. It's Russia that is doing the things that Russia is doing that's playing the dangerous game. Okay, for this next thing, take it with a huge grain of salt. I need your feedback if you know of anything that can verify this, because I saw this and I thought, wow, but I also know that the sources I don't entirely trust. So I saw this. Now, it's not that I don't trust Igor Shushko. He's been doing a pretty good job here, but he posted this, and then I followed this into the source Global Espresso TV, and I'm not sure about that. On August 11, 2025, he posted, Ukrainian diplomat said that Orban prepared tanks and motorized infantry to invade Ukraine from the West at the onset of Russia's full-scale invasion in February of 2022. That's quite an accusation. Right? Okay, so let's look at this. This is the actual article. Serious evidence emerges of Hungarian army activity near the Ukrainian border in February of 2022, according to a diplomat. I still have not received a response from the reports of the Hungarian experts. I respect that in the days before the full-scale invasion, Hungary moved its offensive forces closer to Ukraine's border, he said. He added that tank units were pulled up to the border. Okay, so, now that would be quite an accusation. But it's kind of counter to that which I know about what happened. So in the early days of the war, like the Russian military didn't even know what was going, except for a few very important like generals that were close to Putin. Putin held this very close to his chest. So this seems counter to that. Now, there's another article as well. So let's look at that. The composition of the Hungarian forces deployed to the border in February 2022 with other intelligence indicates Hungary planned an invasion of Ukraine's Zakarpattia region. And again, there is dispute over whether this was once Hungary's or whether this was once Ukraine's. And again, there's a lot of contested territory in this neighborhood. So let's look at this. Peacekeeper or invader, Hungarian forces and the future of Western Ukraine. Yet mounting evidence suggests that Hungary has, at the very least, maintained contingency plans for a potential military incursion into Western Ukraine since as early as 2014, plans that appear to be continuously updated and may even be coordinated with the Kremlin. Okay. And then I know it's cut off and you can't see it, but it's just in the latter half of February 2022, mechanized units of the Hungarian armed forces were deployed near the Ukrainian border. And okay, so that's not necessarily in and of itself a problem, but while the official explanation cited preparations to secure Hungary's border in the event of mass influx of refugees due to the degrading situation in Ukraine, the deployment raises questions like, however, the nature of the forces involved raises questions. The deployment of heavy mechanized units rather than humanitarian or border patrol resources appear disproportionate to the stated goal and strongly suggest that Budapest had prior knowledge of the invasion's timing and likely the operational depth. Okay, if true, that's absolutely horrible, but it makes a lot of sense of why Orban is the way that he is. But again, I don't know. I don't know the source. It's Lansing Institute. I've never heard of the Lansing Institute before, so I don't know how credible this is, which is why I need your feedback. If you can feed me other articles that you have seen from any other sources into the comments, like if the link doesn't work, then tell me, look up the name of this organization and this title or whatever. So I want to track this down, but I just saw it today and I was like, wow. But again, huge grain of salt. I don't know that this is legit. And it does not square with what I understand about what has happened, where, again, Putin kept it very close to his vest when it was about to kick off. So, yeah. Okay. Let's look at what else is going on. So Trump keeps talking about Russia as a paper tiger. Again, there's new rhetoric. There's not a lot of new action. There could be action, but we haven't seen it yet. But the rhetoric shift has been palpable for the last week or so. Let's listen to this.
And I said to him, you don't look good. You're 4 years fighting a war that should have taken a week. Are you a paper tiger? And it's a shame, but I think eventually we'll get that one done.
Okay, so he's there addressing all the American generals, and that's the context where with the flag behind him and such. Okay, so again, his rhetoric has shifted. We'll see what happens with it. Kremlin spokesperson Peskov is not happy about the way that the Americans are now talking about things. Peskov claims that even if the U.S. applies Tomahawk missiles, because that's a discussion, and J.D. Vance, I showed J.D. Vance talking about that the other day, it will not change the dynamics of the front lines. That's true, right? It won't change the dynamics on the front lines. It will change a lot great in depth, 1,000 kilometers, 16,000 kilometers deep. However, the contrary to Peskov's claim, analysts say that Tomahawks with a range of 1,600 kilometers could strike deep inside Russia, including Moscow, potentially altering the course of the war. So, and they are nuclear armable. It doesn't mean that Ukraine has anything nuclear, but they're going to use that as a pretext to say, see, now we have to really do this because they have this weapon that could be, we don't know if a nuke's coming. Yeah. Okay. That'll be a pretext. Okay. I showed this video this was my last video. It was Putin double down. He's talking about our sacred right. And here in this video, okay, so the context here is that Putin is talking on the third anniversary of the sham referendum of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia People's Republics that got enfolded into Russia. And after that, you see this by Peskov. By the way, go back and watch that video because it's like 3 minutes of him talking, but I unpack everything that he said. Okay. Russia's propaganda escalates. Odessa and Mykolaiv are being threatened. Kremlin spokesperson Peskov claims that residents of Ukraine's vital southern ports, they want to join Russia, but can't speak out because it's dangerous for their lives. Yeah, they want to join Russia as much as people in the nets did, which I was showing you. 99% wanted to join, 98%, 95% wanted to join. No, they didn't. That never happens in a democracy. Okay. Peskov also blamed Germany of Russophobia. Well, I wonder why when he's doing this kind of thing. Like, you're invading your neighbor and then saying that other parts of your neighbor state wants to join Russia, but they can't because they're afraid. Okay, Germany is very actively participating in the spread of hysterical Russophobia throughout Europe. Germany is also attempting to take a leading role in this regard. Everything is being done to portray our country as an enemy. Well, I mean, you're really kind of not helping yourself when you're doing this stuff. Like, so there's a reason why you're being portrayed as an enemy. So, I mean, there is that. Okay. While all that is going on, the background is that Russia's economy is cracking. I'll do another video just about the economy here in a little bit. Tomorrow, maybe the next day, 17% interest, 8% inflation. Now, 2% unemployment sounds great until you realize that millions chase second jobs. And that's a real problem because the inflation is so high and they have to do that in order to survive. Okay, last little bit. I thought this would be a pick-me-up. After Daniel Downing, undergraduate Patreon subscriber, I want to say thank you, a shout-out to him. Last bit I want to talk about is this. Witkoff may resign. You heard it right here. Witkoff may resign as early as the end of the year. The Times of Israel is reporting this, citing sources, reports that people close to the Trump's special envoy are discussing his next step. He's considering stepping down after progress is achieved in the Gaza negotiations. So it looks like he's just looking for a win in order to say, see, I did this great job. We resolved all these things, and now we can move on because he's not really being successful with Russia. Okay, tell me what you thought about anything that you saw in this video. I'm really interested in your thoughts, particularly about the Orban bid, like what's going on with Hungary. If you can find real sources about that, and if not, and I'm telling you, if not, like just take it with a huge grain, take it with a mountain of salt, because I haven't been able to really prove this out of legitimate sources that I'm familiar with that I think are sound. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. Hit that like button. Thank you for that. Thank you for the subscribes, the shares, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.